communications class, right? I'm assuming none of you have taken this communications class before. Is that fair? All right, so we're all in this together because I've never taught this course before. Yeah, I know that gives you a lot of confidence, doesn't it? Yeah. But I did my master's, my graduate work in communications, and I do a lot of talks around the country and the world, and so that's why they asked me to teach this, because it kind of fell in the university and the college's lap relatively quickly last semester. So I'm actually excited about teaching it, but I am going to share with you that it's going to be a learning process for me as it is for you. Is that fair? So I'm looking for your insight, your thoughts, your feedback. I've created the course of what I think is, after visiting with lots of students last semester about what they felt like should be included in this class. But I want to continue that dialogue and conversation with you, because I think this is a course that the college is going to continue to offer for the foreseeable future. Right? I'm going to teach this course as a hybrid. How many of you have had a hybrid class before? Okay, so we're going to kind of do a mini hybrid. We're going to meet 2 times, and then every third class you will be working on your own to develop something that we're going to then work on in the classroom, all right? Now, this only works if you guys do your part on the days we don't have classes, right? So one of my key expectations is that you will have the self-discipline and the initiative to do the assignments and to be prepared. Hey, remind me of your name. Akila, how are you? Nice to see you. Wait, why are all of you guys that I saw a couple of years ago in this class? Oh, because you needed to graduate? Is that what it is? And you guys put it off until now? That explains everything. Well, not everything, but explains a lot. All right. Well, all right. This will be fun. Now that Akila's with us, it'll be a lot of fun. We're good to go. All right. So is that a fair expectation on my part? All right. And so we'll be good to go. And the schedule is set, so when all of you have access to Blackboard, I'm assuming, right? You guys have all been through this concept before. Here's a question. How many of you have ever used Turning Point? Have you used Turning Point? All right. The rest of you have probably used, what's the other one, Spencer? Top Hat, right? Ah, damn. How many of you need to use Turning Point for another class this semester so far? Raise your hands. Okay. Because I'm really considering using Turning Point in this class. Would that be a real burden for you? How many of you know Turning Point pretty well? Okay, so when you bought Turning Point, did you buy an annual subscription? One semester. And do you remember how much it was? $30, and you could use it for all of your classes. Is that right? You didn't have to pay $30 for each class that you used Turning Point in, right? No. It's a one-time $30 fee for all of your classes. All right. I'm probably going to ask you to do that in this class because we don't have a textbook in this class. Is that a fair trade? And that way, you can use it for this class, you can use it for all of your classes. Everybody good with that? Okay. Now, the other thing that we don't do in this class is we don't use mobile devices or tablets or laptops. So we're going to put those away. If you need paper and a pen because this is your first day, raise your hand, and some enterprising student will rent them to you. That was funny. You guys aren't listening. It's a communications class. Yes, ma'am. just the mobile app is all we're going to be using. But look, hold off on that. We're not going to do anything with that this week. We'll send you a note out if we want you to do it, right? I mean, if you have to do it for another class, do it. Don't let me get in the way. But for this class, hold off until Spencer will send you a note. Speaking of Spencer, stand up. Hello, Spencer. Everybody say hello to Spencer.
Hi, Spencer.
Spencer's like, where's Waldo? Except he's Spencer. Spencer's the teaching assistant for this class. He's the teaching assistant extraordinaire, the guru of all teaching assistants. But I'm losing him after this semester, so it's a sad time in my life. And your life, if you ever take my classes again in the future. But Spencer is the guy. He's the guy you reach out to if you have a challenge or an issue, and he is Mr. Fix-It. But he will be the one that will send you a note out via Blackboard about whether or not we're going to be using Turning Point. About 99% there. Just makes our life easier to do it that way. Okay? All right. Now, how many of you have had an opportunity to look at the syllabus and to look at the schedule? It's okay if you didn't. I just want to get a feel for it. Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Okay. I don't want to talk about those things until everybody has had a chance to look at them. So by Thursday morning, 10 a.m., you've reviewed the syllabus, you've looked at the schedule. Fair? Everybody's good with that. No textbook in this class, so you don't need to worry about that, right? But there is a resource on Blackboard that I want you to look at. It's a template for creating a presentation. That is your homework for Thursday. Review the syllabus, review the schedule. On Blackboard, if you've never taken a class from me before, there is a little quiz. It's called an acknowledgement or a commitment, my commitment. I need you to, once you've read the syllabus and the schedule, I want you to review the my commitment, and you need to agree with it in order to stay in the class. Right? So everybody, let's get that done by Thursday's class as well. So what are we going to do by Thursday? Syllabus, schedule, my commitments, template. Study the template carefully. This template will help you write papers. It will help you create presentations. All right? So it's a valuable tool to have in your toolbox. A former student shared it with me, and I want to pass it on to you. So we're going to be spending time with it on Thursdays and Tuesdays class. Right? I know I just told you every third class we're going to take off. Not this week or next week. We've got to get some things under our belt before we do that. Everybody okay there? All right. So now you know your homework. Now we're going to spend the rest of our time today talking about communication. Now, some of you, if you've heard about a class like this before, it's typically a speech class. And we are going to be doing some oral presentations in here. But we're going to do so much more than that. Is that a good thing? All right. So let's just define right now what communication means. Who wants to start? Yes, sir, tell me your name.
Jonathan.
Jonathan. I've had you before, Jonathan. Yeah.
I guess my definition of communication is like making your thoughts known to someone else or an audience.
Okay.
It's like conveying either your feelings or emotions or thoughts.
Or information?
Or information.
Is that fair? Very good. Making them known. I like it. Let's stay with that for just, hold on to that thought. And I apologize, your name is? Lizzie.
Making like people not only like having your thoughts known, but having people understand and be empathetic to what you have to say.
Very good. Good. You had your hand up. Your name is?
Nicholas.
Nicholas.
I'm just going to add on to what he said.
Lay it on us.
It's also physically and vocally.
Ah,
There's a lot of body language
yeah. It's not just what comes out of here, right? And that's why I wanted to get back to this. But before we do, can we break communication down into parts? Here's the question you always have to ask yourself. Is what delivered important, or is what's received important? Always remember there's two parts to communication. There's the delivery and there's the reception. And the only thing that really matters is the reception. Because if I stand up here and say the sky is red, and you hear that the sky is blue, have we communicated? We've got what's known as a disconnect, right? So constantly be focused on the reception and the receiver. So if that's true, if reception is so important, what can interfere with reception? Looking at a water bottle instead of focusing on the class. Distractions can interfere with reception. Is that fair? The fact that it's cold in here, can that interfere with reception? Yeah. The fact that you're hungry or hangry, can that interfere with reception? Right. What if I do not articulate very well? Can that interfere with reception? What if I don't send a clear message or signal? Can that interfere with reception? What else can interfere with reception? Language barrier should certainly interfere with reception. Excellent. What else? If I don't know the audience well and I'm not speaking to them at a level that they might understand, that could interfere with reception. Yes, ma'am?
Being unwilling to receive a message?
If the listener or the receiver is not willing to accept or listen to the message, right? That could do it. How many of you, if there's a certain particular celebrity or person on TV, you flip the channel immediately? Right? All right, we're unwilling. Perfect, great example of what can interfere with the message. They can talk all they want. If you're not willing to hear it, is the message going to get received? Not at all. What else interferes with the reception? Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
I think to what both of them said, not showing respect.
Right? Okay. Not being willing to be open to the message. Yeah? Amanda, anything to add? Excellent. Inherent bias and prejudice. What about, are all of our biases and prejudices consciously known by us? Do we have unconscious bias? By the way, just real quick, in case you haven't had a course with me before, we record all of these courses. So if you want to go back and listen to them, you can. Right? To enhance the messaging. Just wanted to make you aware of that, so you know that that's available for your podcast. Spencer will set up a link on Blackboard for you to be able to do that if you want to. Let's stick with Amanda's thought about bias and prejudice. First, overt ones that we know we have. How can they interfere with us receiving messages? Front row ladies, got an idea? You want to phone a friend? Tell me your name. We'll start with that. Kiana. Hi, Kiana. I'm doing great. Thank you very much.
I think if you're biased, then, like I said, you're not going to be willing to listen or listen in the same way as you would to someone.
The worst part of a bias is we tune the message out completely, right? We're not even willing to listen. We turn the channel. We close the door. We don't believe it. Well, that's one, we close the door. Second, even if we hear it, we discount it immediately, right? Because of the speaker and our inherent bias toward the speaker. Fair enough? Yes.
Could you turn that conversation around and make it safe again somehow?
That would be ideal if we could do that. Do we know many people that can do that? I like the way you think. Yeah, it would be cool if people could do that. So bias and prejudice interferes with the message delivery. What is this concept called unconscious bias, which we need to know about? What is yes, sir, tell me your name. DeAndre.
When you're not aware of something, you try to start a debate over that specific topic.
Yeah, I got the first part.
You're unaware of something.
Yes.
Following, you're trying to say something that you're unaware of, which starts a debate.
Ah, okay. Can you give me an example? I know it's hard, and I know you're in front of 100 of your favorite friends. I'm just,
It was just my thought. Right?
okay.
A good example of being unconscious, we all know Trump is trying to support, try to build a wall. What if nobody knew something about it?
Right.
And somebody starts a debate with Trump building a wall, he doesn't agree with it because he doesn't know what he's talking about. But yet it's everywhere in America. It's all over the news, it's on
Okay.
CNN's on Fox.
Right.
You're being unconscious, you don't know what you're trying to talk about, yet a lot of people trying to come at you about it. So
Uh-huh.
starts a debate.
Okay. Right. Okay. Other examples? Yes, ma'am.
I think the way you grow up can, like, it really shapes you as a person in ways you do and don't know about, and the unconscious biases come from things in your childhood where you grew up, where you went to school, like the people you were exposed to, all of that, and you might not realize how much it affected you.
Yeah, I used to do an exercise with country club operators. Now, country clubs in the United States are typically what?
For the wealthy?
Who are their members? Typically money, and typically white. Typically men. Typically old white men. With money. Yeah? See how we got there? We were communicating. That was really good. Okay, and so I used to do this exercise. This was 20 years ago. And I'd like to think things have changed. But I may have to do the exercise again, given what's going on in our country. But here's the exercise. Why don't we do the exercise? Everybody take a piece of paper out. Take a piece of paper. This is not a test. It's just for you. You don't have to show anybody your answers if you don't want to. Let's just do this. This will be good. Now here's the rule for the exercise. You have to write down the very first thing that comes to your mind. If you stop and think about it or try to skew your answer to be politically correct, this will not work. This is a great exercise for self-awareness and to uncover unconscious bias. Okay? And it's very interesting. It can also be a little frightening. So everybody just hold on to what you got. But we're going to learn from this. Are you ready? You sure? Yes. First thing that comes to your mind. Number one, old white man. Don't look at anybody else's paper, just write it down. Number 2, old Mexican woman. Write it down. Number 3, young black man. Don't stop and think. Just put it down. First thing. Next, young Asian male. First thing. Young Asian female. Next, 35-year-old white female. First thing. Don't say Mrs. Maisel, although you guess you could. Next, Native American Indian male. Last but not least, teen Latina, teen Hispanic female. Turn your papers over. Pass them down this way. No names, nothing identifying. Keep them turned upside down. Yeah, keep them turned upside down. Keep them upside down. Yep, pass them on. All in the end. That's all right. Put them down. It's okay. It's okay. That's all right. We got it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Spencer, will you mix these all up? Just mix them up. Now, did just doing the exercise potentially uncover some unconscious bias for you? For instance, we'll know in just a minute. But when I was doing this 20 years ago, some of the responses I would get from the country club people, if I said Native American Indian, male, the most often word I got was drunk. That was the image that came to their mind first. If it was Native American Indian female, it was beggar. Somebody looking for a handout, right? Now, I hope that shocks you, because it was shocking to me. And most importantly, it was shocking to them. when they did it and when we talked about it and we uncovered this unconscious bias that they had. DeAndre.
You said 20 years ago. Are you referring to like 75, like 1975, 1985, 80s, 90s? Around, like,
Well, I took remedial math in school, but 20 years ago for me would have been in the late 90s. Does that help?
Yeah, just to get
Yeah, I understand. No, it's a fair question. I was just having fun with you. Yeah. I was trying to be self-deprecating. It didn't come across that way, but anyway. Yeah. Spencer, we got them? Are they all? Bring them back. I just have this out because I'm looking at the clock, so don't think I'm a rule. Thank you. All right, so let's just take a few when we looked at old white men, shall we? Rich, Trump, privileged, racist, majority, money. I don't know. Rich. Racist. Racist. Old, and they have power. They're picky and they complain too much. Ignorance. Hometown country. United Kingdom. Interesting. Nice, wise, white, polo, golf, friendly job providers. Wow, that's a lot. I can't read that. See, we interfered with the receiver. My grandpa. That's sweet, okay. And somebody was kind enough to write all the categories down. That'll come in handy. Old white man, wearing a Hawaiian shirt, cargo shorts, and flip-flop. Ah, I love that. All right, that's great. Politics. Rude. Trump. Rich. Oh, here's one though. On the second one, the first one was old white men rich, and the second was old Mexican woman. So the old white man, they put rich. For the old Mexican woman, they put not rich. Rich. Oh my goodness. Racist. Wow, they're rich racists. Trumps. Huh. Isn't that interesting? We didn't even do that on purpose. Ignorant. They're rich, racist, ignorant Trump. You got to see the humor in this, don't you? Oh my God. Look at this. Unbelievable. I'm so glad we did this. Dad. All right. The old white race is saved by Dad and Grandpa. Another racist. Scary. Lily, as in white. Traditional, hard to change. And that is so sad. Racist, prejudiced. Sugar daddy. Perspective is everything. Stubborn. Rich veteran. Donald Trump. Granddad. Money. Oh my gosh, we could just do this forever. Rich. What have I told you that about 99% of all old white men are you're probably going to make a lot more money than they do in their lifetime. Would you agree with that?
I agree.
Okay. It's hard to see it right now, isn't it? But it's true. It's true. Here's what we don't put ourselves in context, right? We know what we know, but we don't know what we don't know. How many of you already are struck already by these thoughts about old white men? Raise your hand. Yeah. You know, the rest of you, you're like, no, I knew it all the time. That's funny. Let's do another one. We'll change the order. Okay, so the second one was old Mexican woman, and we'll just do like 15 or 20. Number 2, nice mom. Perspective, right? Spanish only. How many of you know people that have a Mexican culture, a background, family that can't speak Spanish? Right? I hired a kid one time. He worked for me in the bar that I had out in Lubbock, Texas, and I bought some apartments that were primarily inhabited by people that spoke Spanish. And at the time, I didn't speak Spanish. His name was Noel Estrada. That was his name, right? And he worked for me for like 3 years. I go, Noel, I want you to live in this apartment complex so you can manage it. He goes, that sounds great. He goes, I get to live free? Yeah, but you got to manage it. He goes, no problem. First month, somebody didn't pay the rent. I said, Noel, come on, we got to go collect the rent. So we get over there, and the lady, of course, doesn't speak Spanish. And I said, Noel, explain to her that we need to collect the rent. And he looks at me, and he looks at her, and he goes, we need to collect the rent. And I said, tell her in Spanish we need to collect it. He goes, I don't speak Spanish. I said, how can that be? There you go, my inherent bias. Friendly. Can't read it. Somebody gave me their notes for what they're going to do on Thursday. If that's for you, pick those up. Grandmother. At-home mom, grandma. I can't read it. You guys need to remember I'm old and white. Grandmother. Good cook. Man, the old Mexican women are faring much better than the old white men. Can't read it. Where did you guys learn how to write? Were you trying to save paper? Sweet, fat, cooks, big family. Tortilla lady. Grandma, abuelita, which is Spanish for grandmother. Tortillas, clean, sweet, old, fat, tamales, cooks very well, cooking, oh my gosh, hardworking and loving, make big deal about everything, madre, which is mother, works at a local Mexican restaurant, women with kids. All right, so listen, you guys are our future. You guys have grown up with diversity. Do you see what's happening here? What do you see that's happening here? Incredible stereotyping. Incredible. And if it's happening in here, just think how it's happening with old white men. Have we got our work cut out for us? Big time. But it's got to start here. We're not going to make progress out there unless we make progress in here, recognizing our stereotypes, our inherent biases, our unconscious biases, and focusing on our self-awareness. Do you see that? How many of you are learning from this exercise? Raise your hand. How many of you are frightened by this exercise? Raise your hand. Wow, me too. I expected different. But we're going to keep going a little bit because I'm learning a lot from this. Say it again. Which one?
I said, please keep going.
Please keep going. You want to hear it? Yeah, it's okay. Yeah. Okay, so the next one was 3, young black man. Sports car. My boyfriend. Enthusiastic. want to read it, but I can't. Healthy. Football player. Brother. Saggy pants. Basketball. Smart. Police brutality. Fishing pole. First thing, passion, prejudiced against, athletic, fast, thug, "21 Savage"? What is that? He's an artist? Aspiring professional, against the wall, energetic, with sneakers and a t-shirt. So I can tell you that 20 years ago, the country club people said some very unkind things when they were asked what's the first thing that came to their mind about young black men, right? Especially when I couched it as young black man in your neighborhood, right? That little twist switched it dramatically about what they said. Remember, perception and context matter when you're thinking. Which one? Let's do one more. What should we do? The 35-year-old white lady? You want to do that one? Are any of you guys watching The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel? None of you are? Have you watching that? You're watching that? Oh my gosh, I think that's a great show. It's hysterical. Speaking of stereotypes. Well, because it's all about the Jewish religion, and I mean, but it's funny, and she does, I think, and her being a woman in a very gender, is it what?
What's the name of the show?
The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, M-A-I-S-E-L. It's on Amazon. Cool. Amazon Video, yeah. It's very cool. You're broke? You can't Amazon Video, yeah. All right, well, I'll lend you my account. You can watch it because it's fun to watch. Okay, which one do you want to do? Oh, you want to do 35-year-old woman, which is number 6. Mom, nice, love, friend. Polite. Sheesh. You're not hanging around the people I'm hanging around. Tall. Can't count that many. Pretty. Worker. Can't read it. Feminist. Complains a lot. Hillary Clinton. I said 35. Book club or coffee shop. Teacher. Real estate. Yoga. Starbucks. Soccer mom. Really tall. Working class. Teacher. Suburban mom. No. Mom with kids. Sweet. No. Teacher. Holy cow. Success, blonde. Working woman. But do you see how stereotypes shape our perspective about people? It's crazy that we do this, and yet we do it. All right, let's do one more. Which one you want to do? Let's do the Asian female. Number 5. Nail shop. Pretty. Can't see it. Me. First thing came to your mind. Pretty. skinny, education, soft-spoken, hard-working, hair, smart, bald, shy, pretty, quiet, glasses, K-pop, makeup, taking a picture. If I asked you if these stereotypes, now that you've heard them and the different words that were used to describe them, are accurate, what would you say? Not the stereotype itself, because clearly those are accurate. But are the stereotypes themselves accurate? Do you see the difference? Do we stereotype with these words? We've validated that premise, right? That we have unconscious bias. But in order to prove that we actually have unconscious bias, do we have to look at the stereotypes themselves? Yes, right? I know that's a little convoluted, but stay with me. In other words, are Asian women smart, skinny, wear glasses? Are older Mexican women fat and all cooks? Right? I mean, where do these stereotypes come from? That's the question you have to ask yourself. Where do they come from?
From the media, from the TV.
Media, society, experiences. How many of you have traveled outside the United States? And how do you think your view of other people is different because of those travels? Okay. And that gets us back to Amanda's thought around, Amanda, what helps us avoid bias and prejudice? You said it early on in your empathy. What helps us avoid that, right? Putting ourselves in other people's shoes, understanding context, right? Perspective. So, look, we know what we know and we don't know what we don't know, right? But one of the easiest ways to remove inherent bias from our communication concepts is to learn about other people and to read and to study and to put things in context. Have any of you read the book Sapiens? Nobody has read the book Sapiens.
Well, actually, I just gave that book to my dad as a present last night.
But you didn't read it. You gave it to him. Okay, we're going to add to our homework. Look, this won't take you long. I just want you to find a summary of the book Sapiens. 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 You won't have any trouble finding a summary. Just find a bulleted summary of the book so you can see the high points. Okay? That will help us put closure to this conversation around context. All right, but before we move on from this, what did we learn from this? Keila, what did you learn from this?
That we all have unconscious biases, and that they
Speak up just a little bit for me.
all have unconscious biases, and that they kind of creep up on us sometimes when we don't expect them to, when we don't really even want them to.
Yeah. Are they there?
They're always there.
They're always there. What's important about, we know that they're there now, what's important for us to keep in mind?
Just be conscious that they're there.
Be conscious that they're there and not let them impact our thinking, particularly when it comes to making judgments. That's the danger. Do you remember the Starbucks case where the two black men went into Starbucks and they weren't served? And why weren't they served? Because they were black, right? And when we make, but at the end of the day, it wasn't just because they were black, right? I mean, it was. But it was the unconscious bias of the people working there that had these stereotypes similar to what that 20 years ago those country club people thought, right? And they made a judgment based on false premises, right? And they precluded them from an activity in life that anybody else would have been entitled to. So it's recognizing the unconscious bias and learning to not judge another person or an event due to that unconscious bias. Do you see how important that is? Is it?
Was the Starbucks case really unconscious though? Those workers seem pretty active about getting them out.
It's a very fair point.
I think the issue is like, it's a combination of their unconscious bias and them just being black in the same area. And it could have happened anywhere, and it could have happened to anybody. Like, the Starbucks worker wasn't like, they're black, get them out. The Starbucks worker was like, they're loitering, get them out. And now their unconscious bias is like, well, they're black and thug and gangster and they're dangerous and this and everything else.
I think that's a fair point. I do think loitering was the excuse used for it. And we don't know, it very well could have been what they were concerned about. But how many of you had loitered in a Starbucks? Everybody in the place loiters in a Starbucks. That's what people do. It's like they should have a big sign, feel free to loiter. Right? That's what people do there. Come sit, enjoy coffee, get out your laptop and do that. So I think, Akila, what you just said makes a lot of sense. It was what's that? We call that, and I know it's in the law class, but what do we call that when we use a false reason to justify what we did? That's called a pretext. A pretext. I kicked them out because they were loitering. Had nothing to do with they were black. Right? But the other 80 people in the room were loitering too, and they didn't go out. They just didn't happen to be black. You see so we call that a pretext. Okay. A pretext is a fancy word for lying or being disingenuous. Yeah? Okay. But it's an important term to learn. All right. Do you see how unconscious bias and conscious bias can interfere with communication? You immediately could devalue the message before you even hear it. And that's an important thing to be aware of. Because look, let's put it in the workspace. If you're a manager at a hotel, remind me of your name in the back, sir, with blonde hair. Nicholas. If Nicholas is a manager, and let's say, I'm sorry, I've called on you enough. Tell me your name, ma'am. The green? Yes. Kayla. Kayla's the GM. Nicholas manages an outlet, right? And let's say, tell me your name. Madeline manages or works with Nicholas in the outlet, and they have a dispute. We don't know what you put down. I'm not asking you to share. I'm just saying, could you see how inherent bias could impact your vision of credibility for Madeline and Nicholas?
I think it also has to do with like your upbringing, because I know like for me, being a black woman, like my experience in this country So it definitely has to do with life experience and growing up and going through and what you've seen.
Right, right. But can you see why it's important to be aware of that? Because don't both people deserve equal respect and consideration until you hear the facts?
Absolutely.
Do you see? Madam?
Isn't there also an occupation bias between a manager and somebody that's kind of more line level?
I think that's a fair point. Will one manager get the back of the other manager?
Well, not just a manager, but somebody that's just kind of like the front of the line, doesn't have much besides the hourly position. So I grew up where if somebody's in charge of you or is your boss, you don't question what they say. And oftentimes they can be wrong, but you have to roll with it. So isn't there a bias on their opinion?
I agree. I think there is as well. And I encourage you to bust through that. Yeah, you may lose your job, but you'll feel good about it. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to, a brief story with you, but I'm not encouraging you to do what I did. I'm telling you this story so you don't do what I did. We had a manager, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, what he did. Oh, I'll tell you. We used to work in a club, and it was illegal, it was the wrong thing to do at the time, but we would after we closed up, everybody'd sit around, have a cocktail, right, and talk about the day. Well, this guy got appointed a new assistant manager, and he said, that's ending. We close at 2, we're cleaning up, we're going home, I'm tired, I got a life. We're like, okay, if that's the rule. 2 weeks later, he comes in at 2 o'clock, he goes, some of my friends want to stay late, so keep the bar open and we're going to fire up the kitchen. I was like, dude, you just told the rest of us we couldn't do that. He goes, I'm the manager. I went, I don't, who you are. I'm going home. He goes, you get back behind the bar. And then I said something that I probably, in hindsight, when you look back, all things being equal, probably not the best thing to say. I said, and he said, you're fired. And I went, really? Because I'd been there a while. I had some seniority, and I was a damn good bartender. I thought, dude, you're not going to fire me. I said, we'll talk with the GM in the morning. He goes, we sure will. I went, yeah, but I'm still going home. So I went home. The next morning, GM calls me. He goes, you need to get over here. I went, oh, yeah, okay. So I get over there, and the assistant manager's in there, and the assistant manager recounts the story fairly accurately. And then he goes, but I'm still the assistant manager, and you do what I say. And I said, but this time I said it in front of the GM. And the GM did exactly what he needed to do. He goes, you're fired. And that's the only time I've ever been fired. First and only time I've ever been fired. My point is, you can disagree with people without being disagreeable. Had I had the ability then to say, hey man, look at it from our perspective, right? You won't let us do this, and all of a sudden you're coming in and saying the rules don't apply to you. I don't think that's a very fair message, right? And then we could have talked about it. And he would have either listened or not, but one way or the other, we would have talked about it. And had I done that, I'd still be a bartender. We have to learn to disagree without being disagreeable, right? In order to communicate. But I do think there is that inherent bias that people above us in the chain of command are right, and we've all learned that that's just not the case all the time. Fair enough? All right. So let's shift gears now. It's important to talk about bias, and I want you to be aware of it as we go forward, and I want you to learn not to judge. How many of you make judgments on a regular basis about things and other people? Okay, give us an example. Because judgments interfere with our ability to communicate. Just like we talked about unconscious bias, but in other ways. Give us some judgments that we make. Yes, sir. Nicholas. Anytime we drive, we make judgments about other people's driving. This leads us to a really cool discussion I want to get into, but I want to kind of do a thing. But real quick, how do we communicate when we drive? That's not quite what I had in mind. But we do, right? You mentioned sign language earlier. I think that was you, right? We do. But how else do we communicate? We honk. We're supposed to communicate with turn signals. A lot of people don't realize that a turn signal is a communication device. The turn signal is not to say, dude, I don't care where you are, I'm coming over. See, the message has to be received. How many of you get upset when people don't have their turn signal on? But do you use your turn signal all the time?
Yes.
Okay. And how many of you honk? Okay. Honking is a perfect example of being able to disagree without being disagreeable.
Professor,
Yes, sir.
wait, I'll take that back. I don't honk, I just pull to the side of him and look at him so he can look the other way.
And you look at. You need to take my leadership class on emotional intelligence, but that's another conversation. A lot of people do that, but we're going to talk about why if you want to in a minute. But honking is a perfect example, right? How many of you, when somebody's on their phone and the light turns green and you honk, and we assume they're on their phone. I think it's a pretty good presumption. And you honk, right? But how many of you, when you honk, go, huh? Like, dude, I know you're on your phone. Get your ass out of the way. Or you could do just beep. Hey, I know you're on your phone. We all do this. I just want to let you know the light turned green. Do you see the two different styles? Do you see that? So really what we've learned from this is cars should have two horns. They should have a horn when somebody's about to kill you, and they should have a horn that's just gentle. And it really should. Maybe it's not a horn. Maybe it should be auga, or something that just says, hey, it's time to go. Because how many of you have been on your phone at a light or a stop sign and been honked at? Right. Now, how many of you, speaking of emotional intelligence, when somebody honks at you, you get angry or upset about that because you're embarrassed because you got caught, and then you speed away real fast so you won't have to look at them, or you wait till the light turns red, just before it turns red, and you make them wait and go through. Now, the second one is really unhealthy bullshit. And if that's you, you need to spend a lot of time thinking about emotional intelligence, because you're just a control freak and you're just trying to retaliate against somebody for telling you something they should have told you in the first place. They should have told you. Do you get that? Do you see that? All right. So we communicate in all kinds of ways, right? How else do we communicate? We communicate via text. Exactly. How else? We communicate verbally, we communicate in writing, we communicate with our body, like you said. We communicate with our car tools, horn, blinkers, brake lights. Do they communicate? Absolutely. And you got to know there used to be cars without brake lights. And then all of a sudden there were too many accidents and somebody said, maybe we should have brake lights. Right? That's how it works. It wasn't always this way, right? We evolved. So how else do we communicate today? Texting. What else?
What I mean is that, like, for example, if some people go to a job, they keep like holding something, that's the way to communicate.
Our behavior communicates our intention to do something, right? If they walk out the door without paying, the intention was to? There you go. Although, to be fair, maybe they were just absent-minded and they just walked out the door. You don't look like you would believe that. What is your name? Cello? Like the cello? I used to play the cello. I'm not quite sure how to take that, but I'm gonna go with the fact that it's really cool and it's coming. Do you listen? Are you a fan of the cello because of your name? Did that ring a bell with you? Do you play the cello?
I played the violin in high school.
The violin,
Yeah.
string instrument. We're getting close. Do you listen to the band, the Two Cellos? This name cello has just not inspired you on the cello side, has it? Interesting. Okay, very cool name. Where are you from? How did that name evolve? You have to tell me because I've never heard it.
It's actually a nickname from Consuelo.
Ah, Consuelo.
Yeah, Consuelo.
Yeah, East Texas. A lot of Consuelos in Temple, Texas? No, I didn't think so. Okay, it was a rhetorical question. I got it. I know Consuelo. Yeah, very cool. So Cello, though, you had your arms crossed. Was Cello communicating when she had her arms crossed? She's cool. That could be one thing she's communicating. What else? If I sit up here and talk to you the whole time, what am I communicating to you?
Uncomfortable.
If I ask you a question, and then I go like this, I'm blocked off to the answer, right? So body language is a way we communicate. How else do we communicate? In forms. You mentioned texting. Do we communicate with social media? Do we communicate with email? Do we communicate in large audiences? Do we communicate one-on-one? Do we communicate over the phone? Do we communicate face-to-face? All right, well, we're going to talk about all those forms of communication in this class. And I've got a really neat project I want you to do. At your leisure, I want you to go get into an elevator with other people. Have your phone put away so you cannot look at your phone. And you have to start a conversation. Hey. It's easy for some people. Does that mean it's easy for everybody? No. How many of you will find that to be a challenging task? Right. We're going to try it. Are you willing to try? Willing to try. We're going to break down some barriers this semester. Another thing I want you to do this semester, I want you to go eat at a restaurant by yourself. Yeah? Yeah. You're going to eat at a restaurant by yourself. How many of you have already done that? Okay. How many of you think that'll be a real challenge for you? Raise your hand. Okay. Shall we talk why it's a challenge?
A lot of people feel embarrassed when they go eat alone.
You're going to have her tell us what you're thinking of? Why are we embarrassed when we eat alone?
Because like a lot of people, going out to eat is a social thing. You don't want to look like a loser.
That's a stereotype. Isn't it a stereotype that people out alone are what? Lonely, or that they're losers. How many of you love to go eat by yourself? Right. How many of you have gone to a movie by yourself? See, not as many people have gone to a movie by themselves as gone to a restaurant by themselves.
I've been to a festival by myself.
A festival by yourself. How many of you would go to a nightclub by yourself? You're an only child. You need to. Do we communicate to people when we go to a restaurant by ourselves? What are we communicating? What are you communicating?
Leave me alone.
No. The act of being there by yourself. Are you communicating something to people? Confidence? You're okay in your own skin? You don't care what other people think. Right? Because is there a stereotype around people that go to restaurants by themselves? There's a stereotype by people that don't go to restaurants by themselves about people that go to restaurants by themselves, right? Well, there is. And the same thing with movies, right? It's the same kind of thing. But if you go to a restaurant by yourself and you see somebody at a restaurant by themselves, do you give that a second thought? No. If you go to movies by yourself and you see somebody at a movie by yourself, do you give that a second thought? Or do you, unconsciously? See? You got to think about this stuff. Communication is fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Now, is it important that we learn to communicate clearly? Is it important that we learn to communicate and learn to eliminate interference when we're communicating? You have to agree with that because we all agreed that it's the message that's important. And you want to eliminate anything that can interfere with the messaging. Right? Now, do we have control over everything that interferes with the message? Inherent bias in the receiver. Do we have control over that? No. I don't have control over the temperature in the room. It is cold. I know it is. I'm going to fix that. But if I don't, bring a jacket or a hat or light a fire. Who was in the Boy Scouts? All right? Dude, you're in the Boy Scouts. See, that's my stereotype. That's my stereotype. You're in the Boy Scouts, you know how to light a fire, right? All right, we're going to light a fire on Thursday if it's still this cold. How many of you would expect a Boy Scout to know how to light a fire? See, it's a stereotype, right? I don't know. I would think that. Although I was a Boy Scout, I couldn't light a fire. My life depended on it. Not without fire. You know, I need fire to light a fire. All right, so, as we go forward in this class, here's what we're going to do. We're going to eventually tackle all of those areas of communication that we just identified. I'm going to have you craft an email. I'm going to have you deliver a voice message and record it. Yeah, we're going to do lots of presentations in here, but we're not going to do many formal presentations. We just got too many kids in the class. I'm going to call on you, and you're going to stand up, and you're going to deliver a presentation right where you are in your chair. And we're going to have fun. And if you faint, we'll wake you up. But we're going to talk about what makes us nervous, why we don't go to restaurants and movies by ourselves, because that all plays a part in our ability to communicate. When you go to a party, how many of you think it's really awkward to stand there if you're by yourself? Yeah. So you won't go to a party or bar by yourself because you want your peeps, whatever you guys call it, to be with you, right? I don't know what you guys. I'm too old for this. But that's it. So we're going to talk about what makes us tick and why communication can be so much easier if we understand the processes, right? We're going to write some text. We're going to do some social media messaging. Let's just real quick. How many of you are on Instagram? How many of you have given up Facebook for Instagram? How many of you use Facebook as a therapist? Don't answer that. Yeah.
Do you?
No. How many of you, Facebook is to gain friends? I have lost friends on Facebook. I'm fairly political on Facebook. My friends, they're like, oh, they unfriend me. I'm like, hey, you can't, it's okay. I don't do toxic. I'm okay with that. Yeah. How many of you are on LinkedIn? Is your messaging on LinkedIn important? How many of you have a mobile device, a mobile phone? And how many of you have a message on that mobile phone or a ringtone? And is that ringtone communicating with people about who you are? Well, that you're loud, or that, if you got, yeah, I mean, it depends upon the music. And all of you, if you're trying to be professional, you need to think about that, right? Do we communicate in the clothes we wear? In the car we drive? Do we communicate to people if our car is dirty? All of those are communication channels. If your shoes are clean and polished, does that communicate something? I'm not saying what, but it communicates it. Why? Because people make judgments. Now, it would be cool to coin Cello's phrase if nobody judged. But do people make judgments? So the way and the style and the formatting and the language we use to communicate is crucial for our success. And that's why we're going to spend lots of time on it this semester. Are you good? I'm good. Let's call it a day. You guys ready? You know what you need to do? All right, let's do it. Oh, hey, one other thing. I know you're going, dude, come on. Yeah, but I'm going to say that again another time. But hold on. One thing I want you to be thinking about. I want you to find a poem or a story that you can present to us that's important to you in a minute or less. Now, in other words, you might find a poem. You don't have to do the entire thing, nor do I expect you to memorize it. Right? It could be song lyrics. It could be a poem. It could be a passage from a book. It could be a newspaper article. It could be a letter you've written to somebody or somebody has written to you. Something that impacts you or impacted you. Right? But here's what I want you to do. I want you to bring it with you to class from now on. And I'm going to call on some of you every day to present that. But here's the thing. I want you to present it with passion. That means you have to have practiced it. You need to understand the punctuation. I want you to say it as though it makes an impact, that you want to make an impact on people, right? Does everybody get that? You understand what I want? Yeah. Is punctuation important when we communicate? Yes. So be mindful of the punctuation, whatever it is you choose, and read it that way. I don't want you to memorize it because I don't want you to be scared about forgetting. I want you to be focused about communicating. See how I communicated with you? I want you to be mindful and focus on the communication aspect and deliver it with passion so that we all walk away understanding that this was important to you. So some of you need to be ready by, I won't do it on Thursday. We'll start doing it on Tuesday. Is that fair enough? Because you've got plenty to do. Go! Conquer! Have some fun! Communicate well! Professor Barth.
Karina.
Karina?